Since I try to keep my coverage of horror all the way up to the deadline of my Best in Horror countdown, which is September 30th, 2024, I found myself rushing and restructuring this column all the way up until the last day because new horror never stops being released. I was able to watch these two entries just before the cement on my countdown was about to dry. So let's check out these late in the game entries that were too good not to be included at the last minute. At number 26, BEEZEL was released a mere week before the deadline, but it was impossible for me not to include this creepy and witchy nightmare in this best of list. BEEZEL was released on November 24th, 2024, and is available on demand and digital download from Dread. It's directed by Fradkin and written by Fradkin and Victoria Fratz. A simple house in a typical suburban neighborhood is the site of numerous horrifying events, which begins in 1966 and continues until present day. The origins of these evil phenomena seem to come from a blind witch who haunts the basement of this home. Because it takes place in the winter for most of the film, and there's a tendency to flip between film stocks from celluloid to VHS to digital cameras, BEEZEL felt like a low-budget cousin of Longlegs. There's definitely a creepy vibe immediately as a drone shot scans over a cold and barren landscape filled with bare trees and snow-covered backyards. Tone is something I'm going to be referring to a lot in this review because BEEZEL excels in capturing a dire and dangerous tone over and over again in this multi-structural story. Without giving away too much backstory other than roughly edited footage of what looks to be home movies, spliced with what appears to be a murder scene, BEEZEL opens with a cameraman, Lejean Woods, being lured into the home by the homeowner, played by Bob Gallagher. And then after a brief introduction of the two characters, the same cameraman is lured into the basement. Immediately there's a sense that none of this should be happening and something terrifying is lurking around the next corner. It's a feeling that continues pretty much for the entire runtime of BEEZEL. Maintaining that tone is no easy feat, and while the film does take some beats to allow your heart to normalize, it rarely shakes that ominous feeling of dread that something even worse is coming. Split into 4 timelines, the story basically functions as an anthology, with each story building off of the last as time goes on. We jump from 1966 to 1987, then to 2003, and finally 2013 through the course of the film, each segment referring to the one before it, but telling an altogether different story, all occurring within the same house. It's a testament to the writers to come up with so many creepy and tension-laden scenes, all different from one another, yet focusing basically on the same monster in the same setting. The acting is a bit hit or miss at times, as none of these actors are household names, but for the most part, they play the roles well. Standouts include the aforementioned Lejean Woods and Bob Gallagher, who star in the first and one of the most unsettling segments. BEEZEL also reminded me of an underseen film released in 2022 called Two Witches, and if you haven't seen that one, go check it out. It was on last year's countdown. That one not only had a great dark tone, but it utilized the anthology format to tell one story, and of course, there's all kinds of creepy, spooky, and jittery witchery going on. BEEZEL is a highly enjoyable film. It feels dark and wrong, but also has a sort of playful sense of humor, knowing that it isn't above making one dart back in their seats with a well-timed jump scare with a horrifying payoff. In the end, this is a movie about the ongoing story of a haunted house that terrorizes its occupants every generation and will do so seemingly forever. In one movie, it basically tells the story of 4, only cutting out the boring parts. For that, it's definitely worth watching. Now this bonus review is a bit of a cheat. It's actually 3 films that make up a trilogy released all through August called the Fresh Hell Trilogy. But man, writer-director Anthony Quinn flexes his creative talent and delivers on some ballsy and thought-provoking horror. The Fresh Hell Trilogy, which includes The Exorcism of St. Patrick, Wolves Against the World, and Dead Teenagers, was released all through August 2024 and is available on demand and digital download from Cranked Up and Good Deed Entertainment. It was directed and written by Quinn Armstrong. A young boy confused about his sexuality is sent by his disapproving parents on a hiking trip with a priest to undergo a radical conversion therapy. A former member of a neo-Nazi death metal band, who also happened to be werewolves, visits his old friends and must grapple with his violent and racist past. A group of teenagers find a script in the woods outside of their weekend vacation cabin that seems to indicate that they are in the middle of a slasher film. These are the three unique and unflinching full-length feature films from writer-director Quinn Armstrong called the Fresh Hell Trilogy, and all three are fascinating watches. You see, there's this absolutely asinine and ignorant theory out there in the entertainment Twitterverse that if you write about a controversial subject and give it any kind of complex treatment or thought, or look at it from a three-dimensional way, then that means the writer, filmmaker, comic book creator sympathizes with that subject matter. This means that if you make a character that is a Nazi or a pedo or, let's face it, a Republican with any type of dimension, making the character sympathetic, then that means you, in fact, are one of those people. It's that kind of ignorant train of thought that leads to cardboard characters facing odds that offer no challenge or any kind of complex range of thought or emotion to the story. Basically, it encapsulates mainstream writing and commentary of that writing to a T, and it's the reason why people sound more like fading echoes today, as the content they produce, be it scripts, reviews, comics, or whatever, is predictable and interchangeable. And that's why I absolutely love these three films that make up the Fresh Hell trilogy. Quinn Armstrong is from my home state of Ohio, and is proof that creative talent is alive and well between the coasts. I don't want to give these three films a disservice by lumping them all together, but I think what impressed me the most was the maverick voice apparent in all three. Armstrong doesn't take the easy way out of his stories. Characters have made mistakes in the past and still do. They feel more real than most mainstream movies you'll see on this countdown, and it makes the films better for it. Of the three films, I was most impressed with the meta-slasher Dead Teenagers, as it starts out with a typical slasher scenario and then flips it on its head. While it's reminiscent of the excellent film The Final Girls, it takes the subject matter more seriously, and once the kids realize they're in a slasher film, plunges to the depths of depravity pretty quickly. While this is probably the least controversial of the three films, it is the one that I felt to be the most creative. Expect some heinous kills, plot acrobatics, and likable characters who turn cutthroat once they know the way the script ends up. I love the detail that as the film goes on, little flubs like the boom being in the shot or someone off camera popping in to add makeup to the actors is included. It's little moments like these that make this film so ingeniously watchable. In Wolves Against the World, Armstrong delves into the horror of guilt. The lead character, Lewis, played by Michael Kunicki, is a former member of a neo-Nazi death metal band and has the giant swastika tattoo on his back to prove it. He now attempts to atone for his sins in a support group, but when he gets a call from one of his old friends from the past, he challenges himself to visit his friend and see if he can get him to change his ways too. But once he goes back, he finds that it's never easy to go home again. Oh, and Lewis and his former bandmates were also werewolves. Now, this film is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. It never sympathizes with the beliefs of Nazism, but it does flesh out Lewis's former friend Anders, played by writer-director Quinn Armstrong himself, thought processes, and shows the strength of their friendship that began as kids before either were tangled up with racism and lycanthropy. Lewis and Anders' love of music is what brought them together, and while they try to rekindle that passion by making music again together, the wolfiness and the whole Nazi thing proves to be too hard of a difference to overlook. This is a film about coming to grips with one's past, warts and all, and how, with perspective, something one once believed wholeheartedly can be so different than the way one feels now. The performances in this one are fiendishly good. Wolves Against the World is a brutal and gory film, as new rituals and beliefs have overcome his former pack, and their plans for expansion are truly scary to watch. I love how Armstrong is unafraid to tell a story like this, which I know Hollywood wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Finally, though it's my least favorite of the three, The Exorcism of St. Patrick still goes to places most fear to tread. It's about a troubled teen sent to a private conversion therapy camp in the middle of the woods with a priest with radical methods of treatment. Sounds fishy? Well, it is. Torturously so. The film knows that this kind of therapy is wrong and pulls no punches in the long conversations between the priest, Pat, played by Steve Pinder, and the teen, Trick, played by Michael J. Klein, discussing Trick's sexual urges, darkest secrets, and personal feelings. These are intimate and brutally honest sessions that will make you feel embarrassed eavesdropping on. In many ways, Pat's methods are typical therapy attempting to get to know Trick. But things get dark quickly, and it's a truly uncomfortable watch. Again, writer-director Armstrong never shies away from showing some extremely disturbing stuff or talking about some things that would get you banned from saying on most social media platforms. Still, it serves as a character study of two vastly different characters. While the ending proved to be somewhat predictable, the trip there is one I couldn't believe I was watching. It really took some balls to make this movie in this day and age, and I admire Armstrong for doing so. The Fresh Hell trilogy is low budget, but you wouldn't know it by the creative way the ideas are conveyed or the look of the film. The actors aren't big Hollywood, but they're committed to their roles, give their best to the material, and are much more relatable because they feel like real people you might run into at the grocery store. Everything is professionally done, from the edits to the limited effects to the acting to everything else. Armstrong shows that he has the right stuff to bring interesting stories to life on a minimal budget, something most filmmakers often struggle with. So if you aren't afraid to think a little, and if you don't mind watching something that may make you a little uneasy, give these 3 films that make up the Fresh Hell trilogy a shot. If you do, you'll see the work of a talented filmmaker on the rise, along with some great acting, and I expect to see great things from Armstrong in the future. I believe this Fresh Hell concept is about to be made into a syndicated series, and I can't wait to see it. Once again and always, feel free to agree, disagree, or how about you play along at home and give me your own picks for your favorite horror movies. It's October, so let's talk horror. Come back tomorrow for the next level in the Best in Horror Countdown. Be sure to hit all of those pertinent bells and whistles down below, and you'll never miss a post. Happy Halloween, folks. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're